Alright, so let's talk about trade steering, which is one of those game mechanics that's super powerful but often misunderstood. It's all about increasing the value of trade as it moves from one node to another, and can seriously boost your income if you play your cards right. In the case of this run, where I have the Netherlands transferring trade from Aleppo to Constantinople. As you can see, I have about 48 ducats being transferred to Constantinople, but actually, if you put your mouse over there, you can see that the actual value leaving the node is 42.62 ducat, and it's being increased up to 47.69 thanks to the modifiers from my merchants and the trade steering. The Netherlands increases outgoing value by just under 7%, 3.5% from Ragusa, and just under 2% from Montenegro. So how does it work? Let me explain. It's not just a random number, so here's the math. The first merchant you place in a node adds a 5% bonus to outgoing trade value. On top of that, you add your trade steering modifier, which in my case is about 35%. So what it means is that my outgoing trade value increases by 5% multiplied by 1.34. So in this case, it's just under 7%. In certain nodes, so like here I have a trade company, you can use a local venture trade company investment to increase your trade steering even more. So let's see, in this case, if I do just that, my outgoing value will not be increased by just 6.7%, but it will be increased by 9.2. So in this case, it's as if my trade steering value is 84% just for this specific node.
Hey, that's pretty good.
Basically, altogether, the total outgoing trade value increases through trade steering and the default 5% modifier from the merchant, and stacking these modifiers together is why having merchants in key nodes along your trade route can make a massive difference in your trade income. So for example here, when a merchant actually arrives to Basra, you can see that this value is also being increased by the same 6.7%, then it's increasing again in Aleppo by 6.7%, plus the 50% from the trade company investment for a total of 9%, and if I had a world conquest Netherlands and pushed everything to the English channel, I could have built a much longer chain, and all these modifiers stacking together will create an enormous amount of value. So it's just like investing, you know. They say if you invest into S&P 500 or whatever, 10% yearly return and blah blah blah, and here we are becoming a quadrillionaire. Basically, it's the same logic with trade steering. It's just that not many people know that the 5% base value comes from any merchant, not just yours. It could be someone else's. In the case of Aleppo specifically, we have 3 merchants steering trade towards Constantinople, and all of the modifiers multiply in a certain way. Just a bit about how do we actually get trade steering. The most reliable way for everyone to get it is through the naval tradition. So in this case, my naval tradition is just about 10, so not really a lot, and I'm getting around 10% increase through my trade steering. And you can get naval tradition from protecting trade and especially exploring the world during the age of discovery or something. The more of your naval force limit you use to actually protect trade, the more naval tradition you'll get. Keep in mind that if multiple countries are steering trade from the same node, so like here in the case of Aleppo, it's not just me, it's also Ragusa and Montenegro steering the trade towards Constantinople, that can multiply the outgoing value even further. For example, if 5 countries are steering trade, which gives a maximum benefit and doesn't scale further, the value will increase by 11.3% from base merchants alone, so not taking into account any bonuses from the actual trade steering modifier. You can see how powerful it is now, right? If you have many countries steering the trade towards one place throughout the entire chain, then it can create an enormous amount of value. And the best example for me personally is Levik's 1 million ducats campaign, where at the end of the game he releases miners to boost his trade steering through the trade leak modifiers. I'm not sure if he planned for that or not, but those small guys that he just released not only directly increased his trade steering through the trade league bonuses, but also added their own merchants and further boosted the value themselves through their own trade steering. So it's a pretty cool trick. It was an amazing series for me, so go check it out if you haven't already. So now, going back to trade, your ultimate goal, especially if you're a massive empire, is to create a trade route that moves value smoothly from as far away as possible and all the way to your capital. And when I say as far away as possible, I mean not geographically, but in terms of the nodes. So, for example, if I'm the Netherlands, then even though Ivory Coast is pretty far, geographically speaking, in terms of node length, it's only one node away, so it doesn't count. If we steer the trade from China, Japan, the Malaccas, all the way to the Cape of Good Hope, then to Ivory Coast, and then to the English Channel, that would be an amazing chain and will increase our trade quite a lot. Each merchant along the way increases the value of the trade as it moves closer to your node. This compounding effect, just like investing IRL, like I said earlier, can take a trade that started at 100 value or so, let's say, and turn into 150 or even more by the time it reaches your home node, which will be further increased by your trade efficiency modifier. So in this case, in Constantinople, I'm collecting 205 ducats out of 110 of actual trade value. So you can see how all these modifiers add up to create the Giga Netherlands that I have right here. Well, I mean, not really, but you get the point. If you don't have much trade power in a node, so like here in Persia, I only have about 6%. So like here, I have about 9 ducats leaving to Astrakhan, which doesn't connect with me in any way. But even though I only have 6% here, and if I actually start transferring trade from Persia, I'll gain a decent amount of ducats, about 6%, partially because this is an inland node, so I'm getting a pretty hefty caravan bonus, as you can see here, but also because of the trade steering, as my 6.6 ducats is actually only 6.2, which has been multiplied by trade steering, and again, when it arrives in Aleppo, it will get further multiplied through these 3 merchants, and then further get multiplied at Constantinople through my trade efficiency. A common mistake new players make is randomly placing your merchants wherever they see a lot of money. So like here I have Genoa, which is the second richest node in the world, and I could technically collect trade here, but as I don't have a single province or anything that could get me the value there, it would be a big mistake. So instead, think of your trade network like a chain, and each link, so in this case a merchant and a node, should pull trade closer to your capital. Ideally, that is. In my case, my main source of trade income is in Constantinople, so I'm pushing the trade both towards Constantinople and the English Channel, but ideally you want to focus on creating a clear and hopefully efficient way that maximizes the amount of trade that reaches your main node. So in my case, ideally I should conquer the majority of Germany to push the trade forward to Ragusa, Pest, Vienna, then along the German node, so maybe towards Saxony and Lübeck, and then towards the English Channel. And if I actually do that, 110 value or so that I have in Constantinople will multiply so much that by the time it gets to the English Channel, it could be well over 200 ducats.